Good morning, Hope City. How are we doing this morning? Awesome. Man, I don't know about after pouring all that air that God filled in my lungs this morning, after pouring it all out, I hope I got enough left to get through this. Does anybody else feel like that, or is it just me? That was good stuff this morning. Not just good music, not just good vibes, but like good truth that we're singing out, that we're pouring our hearts out to God, because we're only giving what He's already given to us. Like, He filled these lungs with breath, so it's only right that I should scream it out to Him. It's just better when there's music going, so you all don't have to hear it. So this morning, we're starting this new series, Finding Balance. I don't know about you guys, but the last couple years have been probably the opposite of what I would say is balanced. And as a follower of Christ, as somebody who walks in God's word, I think it is fitting for us to be able to find balance in the middle of chaos. You know, this is one of my favorite times of year. Not so much here in San Diego, but especially back home. But it's still better here because it starts to cool off a little bit, at least at night. But you know what's really great about this time of year is campfires. Anybody else with me? Yeah. I know you got to be careful with them out here. Back home, they're massive, and they don't care what happens. But campfires are awesome. The smell of them, the hanging out around them, the great conversation. But you know what's even best about campfires? S'mores. Who's with me? Anybody? Who in here has had a s'more before? Who in here has only had one? That's why they're called that, right? Because if you have one, more is better. Give me some more s'mores, right? And I feel like a lot of times in our life, we are that way with lots of things. If we have one, more is better. My kids especially feel this way with toys. Right? The girls, we just did a joint birthday party for the two of them because one of them is in October and one is in December. And so we did it right in the middle in November. Had all the neighborhood kids over, and we had a big party, lots of donuts, lots of punch and chocolate milk, and lots of sugar so the kids would crash at the end of the night after bouncing off the walls all day. Well, we were outside, so I guess they were bouncing off the ground. And they got these new toys as they needed more because the house is already full of them. And yet there's like this insatiable desire for more. We got this Amazon catalog a while back, which is kind of weird that Amazon would send out a catalog because it's an online thing. But they knew what they were doing because Amelia has gone through that thing like 500 times, and every single thing in there is circled, with the exception of maybe like 2 things. Because it's just kids stuff. It was not an adult catalog with like, bath towels and furniture. No, they knew what they were doing. Amelia has gone through this thing. She probably has the entire thing memorized. And, I'm like, you've circled everything now, so now nothing stands out. Nobody knows which you really want because you just said you want it all. And we're kind of the same way sometimes. We get for something, and then we just gotta have more. I need more time, I need more money, I need more energy, I need more. I don't have enough. But really what we need to do is find balance. So over the next few weeks, we're gonna be talking about a few things. Less is more, stress is bad, giving is good, and tomorrow matters. Today, we're gonna be focusing on less is more. It's all good to have tons and tons and tons of s'mores until the kids smear melted chocolate and marshmallows all over the back seat of the car on the way home. More isn't always better. So how do we find this balance? How do we find this balance for our time? How do we find this balance for our treasure, our money, our income? How do we find this balance for our testimony? Time, talent, treasure, testimony. How do we find balance for all of these things that we are supposed to give of? Because we are blessed so that we can what? Be a blessing, so that we can bless others. And this is nothing new. This has been going on for a long time, all the way back to the very, very beginning, because Satan, the old serpent in the garden, got Adam and Eve to buy into the lie. He hooked them hook, line, and sinker. More is always better. See that thing that you don't have? God said you could pretty much have everything, but that little bit you don't have, that's what you need. What the neighbors have got and you don't, that's what you need. The salary he's making and you're not, that's what you need. But Satan didn't tell them the consequences of achieving the more. Because there's a consequence for everything. More isn't always better, because sometimes with that more comes things that we don't want to deal with. Sometimes that higher salary requires hours that pulls us away from our kids and our family, friends. Maybe pulls us away from church, pulls us away from God, pulls us away from our time in the Word. More is not always better. So today's sermon, less is more, it seems only fitting that we would do something in the spirit of less is more. So we're going to do something just a little bit different today, and we're just going to go over one short verse over and over and over and over again, because less is more. Everybody say it. Less is more. There you go. Less is more. So the verse we're going to look at today is Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 6. And it says this: better one handful with tranquility than 2 handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. Well, I've tried doing less with more. I've tried less time. I've tried less energy. I've tried doing all of these things, and it doesn't work for me. Like my tablet's not working right now. But the thing is what we don't understand is that when we find balance, we really can do more with less. So there are three key steps today that I'm going to share with you. And it's not like, this isn't like a cookie cutter, like you do these things and life is going to be perfect. But these are 3 things that are going to help you on this path to finding balance. These are 3 things that will help us to live out who God says we are. Because I am who God says I am. I am a child of God. But what I want you to think about this morning, everybody should have a little card on their seat, a blank one, not the U card, don't do this on that one. You should have one and grab that pen. And I want you to take a moment and just think about 3 things. 3 things that matter most. What matters most in everything in all of life? What matters the most to you? Some of you're going to be able to write this down really quickly. Others are a little bit more philosophical, and you're like, I'm going to have to think about this for a minute. I'm going to give you just a second. But think about it. 3 things, what's really the most important to you, and then write them down. So everybody got 3 things? Some of you still contemplating? Yes, no, maybe so. If you got 3 things, give a shout. Okay, there's a few of us. All right, some of you might be like halfway through the message and you're still figuring this out. That's okay. But as you figure these things out, I want you to write these 3 things down, and I want you to keep them on your heart. Keep them on your mind. What really matters most? And we're going to keep coming back to this card. We're going to keep coming back to those 3 things. So don't forget. Don't lose it. Keep a hold of it. So this morning, I want to share with you how this less is more thing really works. Because it's a cool statement, right? Like, oh yeah, less is more, cool, that's great. But how do we really make this work? It's getting rid of what doesn't matter to make room for what does matter. Getting rid of what doesn't matter to make room for what does matter. Remember those 3 things that you just wrote down, or maybe you're still working on? Those are the things that matter. So maybe sometimes we got to get rid of some of the other stuff to put more of the focus, to put more of the emphasis back into what does matter. And sometimes that's hard. We do this with our kids. I already brought up my kids and the amount of toys they have. Their house is full of them, and yet they always want more. It's just this insatiable desire. But yet we do this thing with them where every few months or so, especially when it like gets close to a birthday or gets close to Christmas or something like that, where we know they're going to be getting more stuff, we tell them, hey, if you want Christmas gifts this year, or if you want birthday gifts this year, you're going to have to make some changes. You're going to have to make room for some new stuff that really matters to you. You're going to have to get rid of some of the old stuff. And so the kids will go through and they'll pick the things that they're okay getting rid of, unless they're like broken or completely trashed or something like that. We have the kids, we take them and we donate them because, again, we are blessed so that we can be a blessing. And I'm trying to teach my kids that now. Like, yeah, you've got all of these toys. You've got all of this stuff. So when it's time to make room for more, maybe we can take what we have, what you've been blessed with, and bless somebody else. When there's this whole like three questions of what really matters. When people are asked this, a lot of times, people, what really matters in life, typical answers are like, God is important, faith is important, relationships, my children, my family, my friends. These are the types of things that you typically hear in response to what really matters. How many people had some of those things on your lists? Yeah. What doesn't usually appear on those lists is like some new shoes, an iPhone, that new sectional, whatever Costco's got on display at the time, all their cutlery stuff. It's always enticing and they pull you in. But that stuff doesn't usually make people's lists. In my son's case, David, his would be a new Tesla. He's always telling me I need to get a Tesla. I'm like, my Mini's paid off, I'm happy. So in other words, what usually doesn't make it on people's lists is more stuff. Stuff usually is not what's most important to us. So the first thing this morning to achieving those three things, to helping bring those into focus, first pro tip for you guys this morning is cutting back. Cutting back. This is something that my family is learning really well right now, because some of you already know, some of you might not know, but in about a year's time, I'm going to be leaving here. I'm in the Navy, and I'm going to be going back to Illinois, where we're from, to go recruiting. And early, Charlene and I bought a house there. So we're already, and have been for the past year now, making 2 house payments. One here and then the one there. So we are learning that we have to cut back. Maybe that means we can't take the kids out to eat quite as much as we used to. Maybe that means we can't go out to the movies or whatever fun trips we might have been taking. We can't do as much of that stuff because we have to cut back to make room for what matters, and to them getting back home, getting back to family, back to grandma and grandpa and their cousins, back to family, which again is usually a lot of times on people's lists of what's most important. That is important to them. They want to go home. They want to be near family. And so they're learning now that we have to cut back to make room for what matters. And this is an easy concept to hear, easy concept to understand, but harder to put into practice. But you have to understand that an abundant life does not consist in the abundance of my possessions. It doesn't come from the abundance of my stuff. My kids are learning this, but so am I. And I'm sure a lot of you are too. This thing, we never have just arrived. We never get to a point where we have it all figured out and we just are completely 100% of the time in balance. Has anybody in here figured that out yet? 100% of the time you're in balance? Completely across the board? Okay, cool. Because if not, I'd give you the microphone and you could come up. Way back in the day when they built houses, it was a lot different than when they build houses today. For instance, the house that we bought back home, it's an older house, an old farmhouse. And when we went home last Christmas, we went through and we looked at it before we purchased it. And it's funny the things that are different in old houses to modern houses. Old houses, if there is a closet, it's tiny, if there is one. Nowadays, a closet's a bedroom, especially if you're a woman. And if it's not, then you're taking space from somewhere else to make a bigger one. But things were smaller. The garage was smaller. The closets were small. Everything was, the rooms in general, the bedrooms were smaller. That's not the case in the house we bought. The bedrooms are pretty big, but most of them don't have closets. So once you build a closet, you lose some of the bedroom space. But, nowadays you got these large bedrooms, open floor plan. There's like no walls anywhere. It's just like a huge open room, except for the closets. They're massive, and obviously they need walls. You've got not just one garage or like one small garage. You've got like a huge garage, and then there's a shed behind the garage, probably a loft above the garage. Because we need more stuff today. Because if one is good, more is better. But what we need to learn is that less stuff, when we have less stuff, guess what? You find more friends. When you have less stuff and you're taking care of less stuff, with less stuff, you have more time for that family that you probably wrote on your card. When you have less stuff, you have more experiences. Less stuff, more time for this. More time for God. More time for getting into his word. More time for connecting with him in meaningful ways rather than just connecting with him on Sunday morning and maybe Tuesday night or whatever night your life group is, home group is. An abundant life is not determined by the abundance of my possession. An abundant life is determined by the abundance of Christ in me. Not by the stuff I have, by the amount of Christ I allow into my life. Because Christ is ready, he's waiting. He's going to give all. He's not a halfway. It's all or nothing. He's ready to give all. He's ready to fill me completely. But am I ready to let him? Or is there some stuff that I'm still holding on to rather than letting go, living open-handed, and letting Christ have every part? Again, Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 6, better one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind, trying to keep up with everything, trying to keep a hold of what I do have. So cutting back was our first pro tip for you. The second pro tip that I have for you is clearing out. So I've already kind of given you an example with my kids, with their toys and stuff. They do often every few months, they clear out their stuff and make room for new. And I hope as they grow that they'll learn to continue doing that. And then as an adult, they'll continue to do that. Because even myself, it's not super often, but every once in a while I've got to go into my closet and I've got to get rid of some old to make room for the new. Because I'm like, man, I got like a ton of shirts in here that I never wear anymore, and they're still perfectly fine. So you know what? I can go donate them and somebody else can use them. Somebody that maybe doesn't have a lot, that doesn't have a whole closet full of clothes they never wear. I can take it and I can make a difference in somebody else's life just simply by clearing out some of my stuff. Because less is more. There's books out there, there's magazines out there, there's even shows out there about, minimalism and how to live with as little as possible. Anybody into the tiny house stuff? No? A few of you, yeah. It's pretty interesting, it's this big popular thing, tiny houses, but the Navy's been doing it for a very long time. We get a coffin rack to put your stuff in and maybe a stand-up locker, and that's what you got for 9 months or longer. So there's all these things out there, that like, oh yeah, you can like all these cool beds and that fold up into the wall and all kinds of stuff to make room to live with less. But this has been a truth long before it became popular. This has been a truth even before the Navy figured it out. This has been a truth for those who walk with Christ, to find an abundant life, to find balance, to learn that less is more. That means cutting back. That means clearing out. Maybe it's cutting back on the Starbucks runs and making the coffee at home. Maybe it's cutting back on the dinners out rather than the dinners in, making dinner. And what's funny is like sometimes for us when we eat dinner out, it's usually like, A, we're out running around and it's just convenient. Or B, we want to have a movie night. So it's like, oh yeah, let's get like some pizza or some Chinese while sitting in front of the TV and watch a movie and eat food together. But what's interesting is when we do dinner in and like make dinner together, it can become a family experience, right? You work together, help each other cook, bring the kids in, which is a bittersweet thing, right? Because it's like, oh yeah, it's cool, we're having family time, teaching the kids, but at the same time, it's frustrating because they like don't know what they're doing and they're like making a mess. Amelia made sweet tea the other day, and she was doing the sugar, and she's just like spooning the sugar into a measuring cup, but she's just like spooning it in there and sugar's just going everywhere. And I saw it, but I didn't realize how much. And like I sent a picture to some of my family members, and my brother's like, man, there is sugar everywhere. I'm like, oh, you're right, it is everywhere. Because, it's just, kids are just kids. I'll leave it at that. But we can have these moments when we begin to do things together rather than just be focused on the stuff. Be focused on we can just go out to eat. But maybe we could take the time to have a relationship, to maybe pass something down, to teach something to someone else when we slow down. Clearing out the stuff that we don't need, clearing out the clothes that you haven't touched in a year. Simple steps to finding balance, to finding the key to living the truth out that less is more. Some of us, this is difficult for different reasons. Some of us, we didn't grow up with a whole lot, so now what we do have, we're afraid that we're going to lose it. We got to cling on to it for dear life. Or maybe you grew up with not a whole lot, and now you've got kids, so you've got to make sure they have everything, right? Well, I didn't have these amenities and these things growing up, so now I've got to make sure my kids have them. And so it's difficult for us to remember sometimes that less is more. We are overwhelmed with stuff. It's not just kids' toys. It's not just our closets. It's everywhere. It's, you go to a restaurant, and some of these restaurants, their menus are like an encyclopedia, if anybody remembers what an encyclopedia is. I don't remember what the name of the show is. There was an old cooking show where they would go in and like redo these restaurants that were like dying and completely redo them. And the guy, one of his big pet peeves was their menus. And he would tell them that. He's like, the menu's got to be simple. It's got to be simple. You can't have all these like options. It's way too much stuff. Less is more. Less is more. We turn on our TVs. Back when I was a kid with TV, you got whatever came on at that time. And that was all you had. Now you turn on the TV, and depends on how many streaming services you're subscribed to, and you just have endless options, endless stuff that you can just consume. Stuff, everywhere stuff. I've said it already with the kids' toys. I don't need to say that again. It's everywhere. Amazon catalog, full, everything, single thing circled, while their house is full of toys and they already can't decide what to play with. Stuff, just options upon options upon options. And when culture is so inundating us with this message that, oh, you need stuff, it's that same lie that Satan told Adam and Eve in the garden, that thing you don't have is exactly what you need. You need more, more, more. And we got to silence that lie so we can hear the truth of Christ that less is more. My abundance is not found in my stuff. My abundance is found in Him. So what can we do? Well, we got to shift our focus off the stuff. So maybe when it comes time to give a gift, maybe it's writing out a handwritten card or a handwritten letter even. Maybe it's making a book about how thankful you are for that person and what they mean to you and who they are in your life. Again, it's moving our focus from stuff to people. Get one, give one. Open-handed living, always ready of something to bless somebody else. You know, Jesus challenged some people on this, and it was always the people who had lots and lots and lots and lots of stuff that had the hardest time being willing to let go. Because they had two handfuls, clinging to it for dear life, when one handful with tranquility is what we need. An abundant life does not consist in the abundance of my stuff. Ecclesiastes 4:6, again, like I said, we're doing different today. One short verse, we're going to hit it over and over and over again. Hopefully, you guys should already have this memorized. Anybody got it memorized already? Okay, go. That's your homework. It's an easy one today. There's just one, and it's really short. You can memorize this one this week. Better one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. So our third pro tip this morning is paying off. Some of you are getting uncomfortable now. You know, next week we're going to be diving deeper into stress is bad, paying off is good. It usually helps with the stress. You know, debt, the borrower is servant to the lender. You know, you've got that stress. It's just hanging over you. It's just holding on to you when you've got that debt, because instead of you owning your stuff owns you. You know, nobody ever said, you know, man, debt just makes me feel peaceful. Makes me feel whole inside having debt. You know, that monthly credit card statement when it comes in and I just see all that interest racking up, just makes me feel wonderful. The rainbows and butterflies, they just soar. Owing people money, it's the best thing in life. I love owing people money. We don't say these things. No, it brings stress. It brings worry. It brings fear. Because we know that they've got us. Somebody else, something else owns us. That paycheck we're getting isn't ours. It's already taken. But you know what? Making that last credit card payment, that feels good. Making that last car payment, that feels good. Like I said earlier, David is always telling me, Dad, you need to get a Tesla. I don't know. When we drive down the road, it's constantly, Tesla, Tesla. Oh, red Tesla, white Tesla. It's like, you should just start counting them instead of just screaming Tesla every time you see one. Like, at least make something useful of it. Like, count how many you see. You know, make a game out of it. But no, anytime he sees one, he screams Tesla. And now my brother, he bought one recently, and we haven't been home yet to see it. But I know that David is dying to go home and ride in his uncle's Tesla. And he's always telling me, Dad, you got to get a Tesla. You need a Tesla. And I'm explaining to him exactly what we're talking about today. Hey, my car is paid off. If I get a Tesla, it's going to have me for quite some time before I have it. Paying off that house, it's another good feeling. When you pay something off, it's such a good feeling because now you truly own it and it doesn't own you. What's fun is freedom. Debt is the opposite of freedom. Debt is basically slavery. We need freedom to be debt-free, not owing anyone. Why is this so important? Why is it so important? It's because we are called to open-handed living. And if we're constantly shelling out what we have before we even get it, we have nothing left to give to those around us who maybe we could make a difference for, who maybe we could share some hope to. Maybe God's going to call you to share something, but you can't because it's already spoken for. This isn't just to make life better. It does. Following God's word, his rules and his laws and the plans that he has for us makes life better. But it's not just to make your life better. It's so that you can make others' lives better. Because we are called to share hope to the world one person at a time. And if your life is filled with worry and fear and stress and debt, you are not in a place where you can do that as well as you could. This type of living, less is more, following these steps, cutting back, clearing out, paying off, it allows us to live open-handed lives rather than clinging on for dear life. And it requires some work. It requires cutting back. It requires paying off to make room for those things. You might have some nice stuff. That's okay. Less is more does not mean that you can't have anything, that you don't have anything. That's not what I'm saying today. I'm not saying you have to go home and sell everything you have and give it all to the poor. Not what I'm saying. What I'm talking about is open-handed living. Less is more. Getting rid of what doesn't matter to make room for what does matter. One handful with tranquility rather than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. Better a little nice stuff than your own, than a bunch of junk that owns you. Because the richest people in the world are not those with the most stuff. The richest people in the world are those who need the least. You know, when you watch these videos from children over in third world countries and developing countries and all these things, as a parent, man, it's kind of challenging because you see these children who are so happy, who are so content when they get that one stuffed animal. And that is everything to them. And they cherish that one stuffed animal. It doesn't matter that their house isn't full of toys. The one is enough. And meanwhile, my kid's got a house full and it's still not enough. Sometimes we got so much stuff, it's hard for us to even see it to begin with. Less is more. Hear me on this. Write this down if you have to. Your life, it is too valuable. Your calling, too great. Your God is too good to waste your life chasing after stuff, after meaningless things. It's too important. It's too valuable. Better is one handful in children that you love. Better is one handful in close, intimate friends. Better is one handful in some awesome vacation memories. You know, our kids, we started a while ago, several years ago. We was like, man, they get so many gifts at like Christmas time and their birthdays from all of the family. We have big families. I grew up with 6 brothers. My wife also has a pretty big family. They get a ton of stuff from everybody else. So we're like, you know what? We're gonna stop giving them stuff. And we're going to give them memories. We're going to go on trips. We're going to go do fun things with them and give them memories. Again, shifting the focus from our stuff to the people. Better is one handful and a healthy marriage. Better is one handful and the ability to make a difference in the life of the person next to me. Better is one handful and passion for Jesus, passion for God, passion for what He wants in my life, for who He says I am. Better is one handful in sharing hope to my world than 2 handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. As we close, I want you to take out that list you made, the list of 3 things, what matters most. And I want you to meditate on it. I want you to begin to ponder. I want you to begin to think about those 3 things that you decided is what matters most in your life. And now I want you to think, where do I need to cut back? Where do I need to clear out to make room for those 3 things? What debts can I start paying off? Can I start working on to return my focus to these 3 things that I've decided is what matters in my life? Because I would rather have one handful with tranquility than 2 handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. Take that list home. Take it home with you, and I want you to put it somewhere where you're going to see it often this week. Hang it on a mirror, put it in your Bible, put it in your journal, I don't know, put it in your car, somewhere where you're going to see it over and over and over again this week to remind you of what matters most to you. I want you to think on it. I want you to pray on it. And then I want you to act on it. I want you to live open-handed living. I want you to use your blessings to bless those around you. Your time, your talent, your treasure, your testimony, what God has blessed you with, He's blessed you so you can bless someone else. Less is more. Money in the bank, yeah, that's good. Going out for dinner, it's convenient and sometimes better than what you can make at home maybe. Having the latest phone, yeah, that's cool. But having one handful with tranquility. An abundant life is determined by the abundance of Christ in me. You want to find balance today? Spend more time pursuing people and less time pursuing status. Spend more time chasing after Christ and less time chasing after stuff. An abundant life is not determined by my stuff. The abundance of my life is determined in Christ and who He says I am. And He says I am to live open-handed. He says I am to live out this less is more thing. He says I am to be focused on the people around me rather than the status that I hold. So take those three things home. Who does God say you are? You are His child. You are His prized possession. And those three things that matter, it's time to cut back. It's time to clear out. It's time to pay off and make room for what matters most. It's time to make room for God to do something fresh and new, to use you to change the world around you, to bring hope to the world, one person at a time in your house and in your neighborhood.